If you do not understand white supremacy, what it is, and how it works, everything else that you do understand will confuse you. In all of these 9 areas of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Anywhere on the planet, minute by minute, day by day, all of the time, all of the time, all of the time.
Good morning, and welcome to the August 29th edition of the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. Again, thank you for tuning in. Now, we would like for you to be a participant in today's show, and you can do that by calling this number, 516-453-9921. When you do that, and then a call screener or whoever answers the telephone, make sure that you give them your name so that I could properly give you an introduction. And we would ask that if you have a comment or a question, please, ma'am, please, sir, make it brief so that Mr. Fuller can fully understand it and give you a suggestion to an answer to that question. Now, if you are a first-time caller, do the same thing, but make sure that you tell the call screener that you are a first-time caller, and we will make sure that you will be heard. You can also join the conversation by going into the chat room, and all you have to do is go to blogtalkradio.com, and you want to click on programs, and when you do that, excuse me, you'll come up with a list of shows. You want to make sure you hit the shows. Hit the shows, and you want to produce justice show. Then when you do that, then the chat room is available on that, and then you can join the conversations that are in the chat room. And lastly, if you do have a question and you don't want to use the phone, you can Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, B-O-B-B-Y, at gmail.com. And I will receive it. Most of the time, I will give you a symbol to let you know that I have received it. And when the call volume is a little slow, then there's a possibility that your Gmail will be read. Now, I would ask that you do not write me a long novel because we are restricted to basically 2 hours. So I cannot read it, the entire Gmail, particularly with the passion that you may have written it with. So it is better that you do call, but if you choose, you may also use the Gmail. Again, that is the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, B-O-B-B-Y, at gmail.com. Okay, I believe that is it for that. Okay, now, let me start off by saying good morning, Mr. Fuller, and how are you?
Good morning. I'm still learning.
Okay. Now, for those new to the program or those listening in for the first time, we have a segment in which we entitled The Thoughts and Expressions on the Mind of Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. Mr. Fuller, being that today is the 29th day of the month of August, 2023, what is on your mind that you would like to share with us today?
Well, nothing very focused, but some things, like last night, just ran across my mind because there's so many things happening each and every day. I try to keep up, but my mind just, for some reason, went to that question of that was asked at a hearing some months ago
that has to do with selecting a judge who happened to be a black lady, and the question was asked, if I recall correctly, it just came across my mind last night. What is a woman? And so I say, well, that's a question. And according to the compensatory procedure, whenever a question is asked, if you are a person who is trying to solve problems, then every person on the planet should be about trying to solve whatever problem is presented to them or just passes by them that has to do with something that they're doing or may have something to do with something they will be involved in doing, or they're involved in it directly or indirectly. All questions should turn a person's mind into what is the exact answer to that question. That's just a part of the compensatory codified system, as I call it. This is what this program is about. And every question, presumably, has an answer. Even if the immediate answer is, I don't know, which means now you have another question, and that is, can you find out? Because all questions that are asked should be answered, and should be answered correctly. That's what we call the genesis, you might call it that, of progress. If you want, whatever progress is supposed to be, or whatever quote unquote success is supposed to be. That's just, and we try to, according to logic, everybody should try to train their minds in such manner that when they hear a question being asked of any kind, their mind should just automatically say, now, do I have the answer to that question? And should I have the answer to that question? Because that question may be important to me at one time or another. So my mind just for some reason went to that question. What is a woman? And I thought about it, and so I said, well, I got to answer that question according to the code, but it was already in the textbook, in the word guide, the compensatory counter-racist codified word guide. But I had forgotten that I'd put it in there, but I just did a little note because I said I might mention that in passing, since that seemed to be something that came up at that hearing, and it started a little controversy. I don't think it lasted very long, but I said, did anybody actually answer that question? And if I recall, looking at it on television, I was looking at part of that hearing, I didn't hear anybody answer the question. And it may have been answered, but I don't remember hearing anybody answer it. So I just jotted down something, compensatory code. I put down, first of all, the question, what is a woman? And then I put down compensatory code, thinking about all the answers that I possibly could come up with, and then come up with what I would consider under these conditions in the year 2023 a correct answer. So here it is, the one that I came up with last night, even though I had already answered that question in the word guide. So I went to the word guide this morning, and I found a long answer to that question, or rather a definition, not so much the answer to the question, but a compensatory definition for the word woman. But last night, here's what I came up with. Compensatory code in answer to what is a woman. A woman, quote unquote, is whatever a woman is, according to whomever has the most power to decide what a woman is. I'm going to say that again. A woman. Now, I had in the back, and you might say in the front of my mind, all these different classifications for genders now. That's where my mind kind of got focused. So I said, well, considering what everybody's doing nowadays, the answer to the question, what is a woman? A woman is whatever a woman is, according to whomever has the most power to decide what a woman is. Since there's so much controversy, you might say, or so many different descriptions of gender nowadays, what is a woman? So who would make that final decision? Who has the most power to make that decision? And so the code, that's another question. Whom has the most power? So when I answered that way, I had in mind what? The white supremacists, or the people who decide what most people are going to do on this planet or say about anything. The white people who believe in white supremacy. They're the most powerful minds on the planet. So when they say what a woman is or what a woman isn't, they don't even have to ask that question. Because what I witnessed on the television during that hearing was a white man asking a black female what a woman is, when I presume that he's either, as a white man, he's a racist, or he's in contact with people who are racist, or he wouldn't have any power. So he would probably have the answer to that question. And so if he's a racist, he would be among the most powerful people. Or if he's not a racist, he would have access to the people who are. Because white men do talk to each other. And I guess they talk to each other honestly and give each other information. Otherwise, we wouldn't have what you call a system of white supremacy as the most powerful government on the planet. So in answer to the question what a woman is, I just thought that I'd present that this morning. So that's what was on my mind.
Okay.
You know, whatever the most powerful people on the planet decide that, because they are making the decisions now what gender is. And according to what they call the rainbow, it's all kinds of genders. It's not just male and female anymore. It might be 1,000, whatever the white supremacists say that it is. And so, just something to think about.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Because the lady who was being asked that question is going to be a judge, but the question wasn't answered. What is a woman? What is a man? What is a woman who becomes a man? It's all kinds of things all over the place now. And so black people need to be really well versed in this because of what? To keep away confusion.
Mm-hmm.
And the way to get rid of confusion is what? According to the code, Questions and answers.
Questions and answers, yes, sir. Okay. Okay, very good, very good. 516-453-9921 is the number if you would like to get in contact with this show. Before we move on, Mr. Fuller, I know that you had mentioned several times that you had completed service in the U.S. military, in particular I believe it was the Air Force and the Army. Am I correct on that, please, sir?
That's correct.
Okay. Being that you had service in the United States Army in particular, do you remember or have you ever heard of the 761st U.S. Army Tank Battalion?
No, I hadn't.
Okay.
Until just recently, I think I saw a program, a documentary on that.
Yes, that's what I was getting ready to refer to, and I thought about you particularly since these were a battalion of black military Army soldiers that were they weren't relegated. They were in the military, and they were a tank battalion. Very, very good, and they did fight under General Patton. And this was when the service was extremely racist, and what they did, and when Patton, I believe it was Patton, saw how good, either Patton or MacArthur, I think it was Patton, saw how good they could fight against the Germans in particular, really wanted those brothers, and they did, and how they were treated there in Germany, fighting 183 straight days without a break, and how the German soldiers were terrorized from them because they were expert in them, where a lot of people, in particular in power, didn't think that they would be any good. They were really an afterthought, but they surprised them. And then how they were treated when they came back here in the States, in particular in the South, but really all over. Anyway, I thought I would ask you if you had ever heard of that. I hadn't heard of that. There's a lot of black history that I hadn't heard of, but I was very proud of them. And they were the so-called original Black Panthers because of what they did and what they did. And they finally did get posthumously recognized by former President Bill Clinton. Had a ceremony at the White House recognizing them. And if I'm not mistaken, well, I know there's one still living, from that, and he described what was going on. So if anybody gets a chance to see that here in the listening audience, it would be worth your while to get the documentary narrated by Morgan Freeman. And he had brothers that were in the service, and in particular, some of them, I believe, were in the 761st U.S. Army Tank Battalion. It might be a good look to look at some of our history. Okay, anyway, let's move on. Let's go to the phone lines, and let's go to Milwaukee. And there we have Corey. Don't forget, if you're on the line and you want to make a statement or a question, make sure you push the number 1 button so that I could recognize you. Give the call screener your name. Okay, Corey, you ready? Here we go. Wait a minute. Corey, there we are. Okay, Corey, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr.
Yes, sir.
Fuller.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Fuller, my question has to do with being displaced. Is it logical for as a black male to seek shelter with a black female if this is the available place for us to reside if we're being dislocated?
Is it possible for a black male to do what with a black female?
Is it logical for a black male to seek shelter with a black female if this is the best situation for them, if they're being displaced, should they try to cohabitate together, or should the black male seek his own place if possible?
He has to do whatever he has to do. We're all prisoners of war. We don't have a place. Black males and black females can't choose anything. It's all done by the white supremacists, where we are going to be. Now, I'm in a place now, I mean, right this minute, like black people all over this planet, they come under the system of white supremacy. Black males and black females don't choose anything where they're going to be. Not one. Anywhere on planet Earth in 2023. That's all decided by the white supremacists. I mean, they can go to an island or whatnot. There's nothing but black people there, and they say, you're out of here by next week, all of you. And they say, why? You know, how, you know, because I said so. That's all they have to say. And they'll back it up, too, by seeing to it that you are no longer on that island. Well, my people have been here for, you know, hey, what did I say? Out of here by tomorrow. I don't want to hear anything about your 1,000-year history or nothing. I have spoken. I'm your God. You don't have no gods before me. That's the voice of the white supremacists, and every time they say it, they make good on what they say. Nobody, you know, with color in their skin gets in their face and talk about what they're not going to do. So, in answer to the question, wherever you happen to go, they will have to okay it. They meaning the white supremacists, racist man and racist woman. That's what white supremacy means. When they speak, that's the bottom line. There ain't nobody else to run to. They're proving that over and over again. We'll say, well, no, you know, I have a higher being and higher than them. Well, the higher being is allowing them to do this for some reason. And I think I have come to the conclusion that to see how we are going to react. Are we going to come up with a system where we can decide some place that we can go and not always have the white supremacists, racist man and racist woman decide where we can have a roof over our head, if any at all? It could be, and I believe in it, that whatever produced me is saying, Fuller, get yourself a code where you can question this with some credibility. And that your assignment is to change this into something the way it ought to be. And if you're not on your assignment, you're going to keep being miserable, because I'm going to allow these individuals called white supremacists to keep you miserable forever and making everybody else around you miserable on account of your mostly innocent and foolishness. That's what I believe. That's just my viewpoint. And that's my answer to the question. And wherever you can go, we're all displaced persons, and we're going to keep being displaced. That's an excellent question for this morning, because that was in the back of my mind, too, somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, just wherever you can go, that will better your condition.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're not in charge. No black person is in charge of anything on the planet when the white supremacists come around and say, well, wait a minute, you have to check with me on that. And so we all have to check with them. We ain't got nobody else to check with.
Yeah.
Apparently the creator of this universe has said, you're not doing what I want you to do. So until you do, Neely Fuller, you're going to be miserable.
Mm-hmm.
Because all of you people that I created are not the way you ought to be. But some of you are smarter than others. And the smartest of the smartest believe in systems called racism in the form of white supremacy.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
So keep that in mind.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you, Corey. Thank you very much. Being that we're all still learning, I wonder how many, including you, Mr. Fuller, have ever heard, well, you're in Washington, D.C., and I think I understand, I guess it was yesterday, there was a, and I'm saying this in a particular way, but air quote, celebration of the March on Washington back in the 60s, and they had 6 speakers, Martin Luther King, not James Baldwin, they wouldn't let him speak, Roy Wilkins, I think James Farmer, there were 3 other, Roy Wilkins and 2 others. I got a hold of some information from Malcolm X, 2 speeches one might want to check out. Probably most won't because they're at least 40 minutes long, but Malcolm X explained in his speech called Message to the Grassroots. It's about 43 minutes long. But he explained what was really going on with the March on Washington, who financed it, and all the stuff behind it. Very good message if a person would like to inquire about that, and also the ballot or the bullet. Just a little information that might be helpful, it might not, because we all are still learning, but you might want to check that out. Have you ever heard of those 2 speeches in particular, Mr. Fuller?
Yes, I've heard the speeches and read them and whatnot, but I don't remember anything about them because my memory now is just about shot. Well,
you know, in reviewing those speeches, and this is just me, in my opinion, certainly nobody else, but after Malcolm explained what was really going on behind the scenes, I really don't refer to it as the March on Washington. I refer to it as this farce on Washington because I see the same thing, or really nothing has changed. But anyway, that's my opinion. Maybe somebody else could, would have their opinion. But I did look over it, and both of them, more than one time, I would have to say, quite a few times, both speeches, even though they were back in the 60s, still relevant today. Okay, with that, let's take a break. You are listening to the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, and we thank you so much for your listenership. Now, if you would like to make a call, you can by calling 516-453-9921. When you do and you have a question, just press the number 1 button and get in line. Give the call screener your name, and we'll go from there. I would ask, ma'am, sir, please do not write or do a novel, because Mr. Fuller and I, we're not 4-minute with time to do that, but just make your questions short and sweet, and then wait for the answer that Mr. Fuller can give. You can also Gmail me if you would like at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com. Again, I would ask that you not write me a novel because I just cannot read it. Please, ma'am, please, sir. But I will try to get to it, and I will send you a symbol that I do have that. And you could go just for some good conversation you can go to blogtalkradio.com, and you want to click on programs, and the program you want is the Produce Justice Show. The Produce Justice Show. That's the show that you want. You click on that, and then you become. There's an icon where you can get into the chat room, and there usually are some very good conversations that are in there. And occasionally, I will lift some of the comment that might be going on and may ask Mr. Fuller a question, from there. But do not use the chat room to ask me a question, to ask Mr. Fuller. That's not going to work for you. Mr. Fuller, in the first segment, referred to a woman that he looked at the definition that he has in the Word Guide. Well, that's part of the books and material that Mr. Fuller has from that, and you can go to producejustice.com to get the books and materials, and even past shows are listed on there. I haven't been on there recently, but they are on there, and you can get the information there. That is at producejustice.com. That is producejustice.com. Okay, moving on here. Let's go to Richmond, Virginia, and that would be Christopher. Okay, Christopher, get ready. Let me get this cursor over here, and let's see if we can get you on here. Okay, Christopher, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, y'all. I actually have two questions, and I will keep them brief. The first question is it constructive to call yourself something that you're not?
No, because that causes confusion. You have to have truth if you're going to counter racism and establish something called justice, which means guaranteeing that no person is mistreated and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. That's the compensatory definition for justice. So you have to have truth in order to get justice. If you have any errors made, you're not having truth. Truth is that which is. That which is what? Is what it is. Call it, we have a slang expression that's very accurate. Tell it like it is. That's been around like forever. Don't tell it like it ain't. That's not truth. And when you don't have truth, you have what? You have confusion. And the white supremacists are masters of making confusion. So everything has to be very clear. And when you're having conversations, you don't add to the confusion, which I think I have a tendency to do. Sometimes I'm just trying to explain something. I'm pretty raggedy at it. But I'm supposed to be constantly getting perfect, trying to get perfect at answering a question. I'm nowhere near that. Mm-hmm. People have been listening to this program. I'm kind of sloppy. Sometimes the questions are not very clear, and I make it even worse than trying to answer. But sometimes the questions are clear. So, but to answer this question, yes. First of all, find out what the truth is and present it forthrightly. Now that's according to the code. Mm-hmm. Find out, get the accurate information, make sure you got it. And if you don't know, and that's the truth, you say, well, I don't know. Mm-hmm. And that's contributing to finding out. Because why? The laws of the universe, the laws of compensation. There. And what does that say? There is an answer, the answer to every question. It's just a matter of finding out what it is.
Yes, sir.
And once you get it, stick with it. Because there's nowhere else to go.
Okay, Christopher, what is your second question, please, sir?
The second question, thank you for that answer, Neely. I appreciate that. The second question is when the Roots movie came out in the 70s, do you possibly know about any instances before that movie came out where they were talking about how people in this hemisphere of the world, like non-white, dark people in this hemisphere of the world, basically came from the slave ships in Africa? Do you remember them talking anything about that before the Roots movie came out?
Oh, yes. There were talk about it has been since it began. But I say that, and a lot of people begin to say this now, and just by logic, they are literally oceans full, if you want to use that as a measure. Stories each day about just this thing that we call enslavement of African people by the white supremacists, and enslavement of black people even before the system of white supremacy. But particularly under the system of white supremacy, it's just my guess in answer to the question and about Roots and the movie and all like that. There are millions of stories that will never be told because all of the people who knew these stories are gone. And nothing was written by them. They were not recorded. And I think about this constantly. All of the millions and millions and millions of individual stories that are much worse than anything that was ever shown. I mean, things that happen to black people according to the hand of the white supremacists under this thing called slavery or white supremacy, which is also slavery. It's all the same thing. It's all the same fabric. You don't separate the two. The system of white supremacy, slavery. White supremacy is slavery. It's just been modified, modernized. But it's slavery. And the whole history of slavery under the system of white supremacy will never be told by anybody because it'll never be known.
Yes, sir.
The actual brutality, in my opinion. Millions and millions and millions of pages. This whole book, millions of books. I mean, the information would fill books, would fill libraries that will never be told.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That's, plenty of evidence to make a person believe that.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Christopher. Yes, sir, Mr. Fuller. I can verify that. Not that you need to be verified because you don't, but I was an adult when I finally found out about what happened in the Belgian Congo under King Leopold II, where over 15 million black people were slaughtered, hands cut off and all kinds of things, and were killed. But that was never in any books that I read or any books in college or anywhere that I had this information, and I was appalled to find out about that, or what happened under the book Without Sanctuary. You're correct. Millions of stories that have not been told.
And never will be.
And never will be. That's the sad thing about it. And you got people that want to cut out what is in there. I want you to address something, particularly that Malcolm X said, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said America's problem is they don't like black people. They have a race problem. And he said basically that if that is not addressed, he said that you're basically America. Now this is Malcolm. Said you're sitting on a nuclear, worse than a nuclear powder keg, and we all know by what we've seen what a nuclear explosion can do. With all the gun violence, Mr. Fuller, that has gone on right now, even where I'm located at, 3 deaths in 3 days, including last night. Even a pregnant woman shot and killed, and her and her baby. And youth, 13 years old, shooting and carrying on. What does the code say about addressing the gun violence here in this concept?
What the code says, the whole code is about, you got to get rid of the system of white supremacy, or all of this, everything miserable is going to continue. As far as what we call, quote unquote, the race issue. The misery is going to continue, like was brought out at the recent march on Washington. A lady in the King family said, this is a lot of work. That was supposed to be a commemoration, and the thing that you commemorate is that a whole lot of work needs to be done, because we're nowhere near a solution to this thing called the race problem in the form of the system of white supremacy. You have to get rid of the system, or the misery is going to continue. It'll wax and wane, and some days will be better than others. But it's going to be the biggest show on the planet into infinity, forever, if you don't just pull this thing called the race problem up by the roots. Otherwise, we're just going to be looking forward to it, generation after generation, dodging bullets while you're riding the school bus. It might just come down in some places to be a routine thing. People just line up along the sidewalk and shoot at the buses, like target practice. And then it'll die down, and the shooting will stop for 2 or 3 days, then it'll go back. But the misery, in one form or another, is going to continue as long as you have a system of racism. The system of white supremacy is designed to make these things happen. So the code says that the smartest people, and that's why the instructions are, when anybody starts talking about the race issue, let the smartest people come forward and say why they haven't solved the race problem, white or non-white. We got a lot of people who like to grab the microphone. I don't particularly like to do any of this, but I think it's my assignment, since I can't get away from it. There's no place to run.
Mm-hmm.
You have to do what you can to destroy the system of white supremacy and replace it with justice. There's no way around it. And if you don't do it, nothing that you do on the planet is going to make sense. Now, I'm making a flat statement on that. I don't care what your ambitions are. As long as you got the system of white supremacy, you're not even doing your job of being on the planet. Because everybody should have that commitment that that is the number one priority for their entire existence as long as the system of racism does exist. That's the compensatory logic.
Yes.
Which was forced on me. I don't want to deal with it. I wanted this. First time I was aware of racism, I said, somebody ought to take care of this and should have taken care of it before I was born. But I found out I couldn't run away from it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So we were stuck with it, and as long as we're stuck with it and answer to the question, we're going to keep having this misery and crying about it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Arms around each other in front of funeral homes.
Yeah, teddy bears and ribbons and all that stuff. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, teddy bears and ribbons and balloons. That's sad.
Very
That's
sad.
all we're looking forward to. Teddy bears and ribbons and balloons in front of the funeral home and a whole bunch of hugs. And not solving anything, ever.
Yes. Which is a good segue, Mr. Fuller, into your book. Why did you write the book? And what is the book about?
The book is supposed to help us to get rid of the system of white supremacy and replace it with the system of justice worldwide. And do it in 15 minutes if you can. But if it takes 2 million years, then, well, try to codify what you're going to do day by day, and what you're not going to do as best you can, that will bring about that result. A government of justice worldwide, rather than a government of racism worldwide. Because the only government we have on the planet in 2023 is the government of racism in the form of something called the system of white supremacy. It's the only government on the planet that's worthy of the name government. And it's an evil government, an evil system, thought up by somebody and put in operation. So everybody on the planet, white and non-white, has a duty to get rid of the system of white supremacy. And nobody, it seems like, is qualified to do it. But there's somebody who is qualified to do it because somebody put it together. And somebody's keeping it together.
Mm-hmm.
So they would be the usual suspects, starting with somebody classified as white.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, where can we get the books at, Mr. Fuller?
You can go to producejustice.com because it's designed to help the victims to try to get rid of the system of white supremacy and replace it with justice in all areas of activity and as soon as possible. And so there are a book of suggestions for how to go about doing it. Just suggestions.
Just suggestions, yes, sir.
Neely Fuller, who is the author of the book, can't guarantee that they will work, because nothing has worked. But I'm saying, so far, from what I have seen, this will be an excellent start.
Yes, sir.
The code books. When people ask me, what books do you? I say, well, all books, the Bible, the Quran, books by great philosophers and not so great, any book. But I want mine to be right up there with any book about racism directly and what to do about it as individual people. And you can get it by going to producejustice.com.
Okay.
Now, you got 3 volumes up there, but they'll give you the instructions at producejustice.com will tell you what the volumes are about.
Yes, sir. Okay. Before we move on, let's get something real clear. A question came up in group. Mr. Fuller, be clear about this. I know you have, but I'm just asking the question for clarity for those who may not understand. Here's the question. Are all white people racist?
No. Not if you follow logic, and the book that I have written and what this program is about always following logic. I can't say that. I don't know all white people. But I do know that the white people who believe in racism are the most powerful people on the planet. Now, who they are as individuals, I can't say. But I can use logic, and we should always follow logic.
Yes,
what
sir.
about a white baby just born? Should that baby be suspected of being a racist? And logically speaking, no. Logically speaking. Why? Because a newborn baby doesn't know anything about color, as far as I know.
Mm-hmm.
I was born. I don't even remember what I knew and didn't know when I was born. I didn't even know that I was born. I don't remember the day that I was born. And from what I hear, that's the experience of everybody on this planet. That they don't remember the day that they were born. Somebody told them when they were born. So it's not logical that a person like that in that kind of state wouldn't know anything about colors either. And in order to be a racist, you have to know your colors.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have some idea about what color is. Because racism is about looking at a person's skin color and making a decision about how that person is supposed to be treated.
Mm-hmm.
That's racism. Their whole root is that.
Okay.
You can't have racism without knowing your colors.
Without knowing your colors. Okay, and then a follow-up to that, how would we determine that, since you say that not all white people are racist, however, Black to Deaf indicated, however, all white people benefit from the system of white supremacy. All of them benefit from our suffrage. How could we tell, how could a black person tell that a person, a white person, is or is not a racist?
You can't. Because racists, the refined racists, are extremely deceptive.
Okay.
And so what the code says, any white person, any person classified as white, and that's the question you ask, sir, ma'am, are you white? Because a lot of black people look like they're white. And that's just the way it's set up. So you have to first ask a person, are you classified as white? And then if the person says yes, then according to the code, you can be honest with the person. Well, I'm duty bound to suspect that you could be a white supremacist. I don't really know, ma'am or sir, if you're talking about racism. And you're going to, that question is asked. How can you tell a white person who is a racist from a white person who is not? You can't.
You can't.
You can't. So all you can really say is, I suspect you could be one until you prove to me that you're not. and if the person becomes angry about it or anything like that, you say, well, then you ask questions. Well, why would you get angry at me suspecting that you could be a racist when the world is dominated by racism? And you fit the description of a person who would be. Because non-white people are not racist. They don't have the power. And there's no evidence that they are. You say, well, non-white people kill each other and call each other by racist names. Yes, and where did they get that? From the racists. So we are victims of racism.
Yes. I noticed that you used two words in that, could be and suspected. Why do you say that? Because you don't have any criteria for knowing for certain who is and who is not a racist. All right.
That's the answer to that question. How can you, and you can ask white people, how do I know the difference between a white person who's a racist and a white person who isn't? How do I really know for certain and can swear under oath that this white person is not a racist? Where did I get that kind of qualification? Neely Fuller. I'm not qualified to do that. You say, well, you're not qualified to call a white person a racist either. And I don't. According to the code, I don't call any particular white person a racist unless that white person say, I'm a racist. I believe in white supremacy. Now I can say, well, that's what he told me, and I believe it. I believe he is exactly, or she is exactly what she told me. Say, well, what about the white person who says, I'm not a racist? I suspect that they could be one. I suspect they could be one. I can't say they are or aren't, because I don't have a master list of who is and who isn't. Somebody's got to be a racist in order for there to be a racist system.
Yes, sir.
But I don't have a master list of who is and who isn't. So just like any law enforcement officer who is looking for a suspect, that's what that law enforcement officer has to say. I don't know who did the murder, but I suspect. I got a list of suspects here based on what description I have. Every law enforcement person knows that. That's the procedure. They say, well, you're saying that this person is a suspect? Yeah, we picked up a suspect. We don't know for sure that this is a robber, but we do have a description. And so we picked up someone who fit that description. That's the logical procedure.
Mm-hmm.
So you do the same thing in a world that's dominated by racism. You say, well, who is a racist in this room? We don't know, but we suspect anybody can if they fit the description of a racist. And first of all, if you're looking for a white supremacist, you look for somebody white. That's logical.
Mm.
They say, well, suppose you're making a mistake. Well, we'll find that out by just keep looking and re-examining. The person says, well, no, I wasn't nowhere near that neighborhood at that particular time. That's what you tell a law enforcement officer. They say, well, we don't know, but you are the closest thing to what we're looking for. You were wearing a red shirt and some jeans and some yellow shoes, and that's how the suspect, that's what we have here on paper. And you may not be that person, but we're the closest thing we got to it. So we are questioning you, that's all.
Okay. Got to leave it there because we are out of time for the first hour. So thank you, Mr. Fuller. Thank you, callers. Those of you who will have to go, hopefully you can tune in next week. But for those who are going to be with us, we have another hour. So stick and stay. Don't go away. We'll be back in 5 seconds. Welcome back to the second hour of the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby, and we welcome you to the second hour of today's program, being the 29th of August, 8/29/23. Thank you for listening. Get in contact with the show by all means. Here's the number: 516-453-9921. And if you have a question or comment, just press the number 1 button, get in line, and when it is your turn, oh, by the way, give the call screener your name. When it's your turn, I will call on you, as I have the Dollar and Ray and Christopher again, and I see Ryan in there from Buffalo. Many callers on the line. We do have a few lines that are open. If you are a first-time caller only, make sure you give the call screener your name, and they will tell me, and then we will make sure that we get you on the air. Okay. You can also join the chat room by going to blogtalkradio.com. You want to make sure that you click on programs, and the programs you want, or you do that, you're going to click on shows, and the show you want is the Produce Justice Show. When you get that, then the chat room becomes available, and you can get in there. And there's some very, very interesting conversation. Much learning goes on in the chat room. And occasionally I will lift something out of the chat room and present it to Mr. Fuller. And then we'll have a discussion on that. But do not use the chat room for me to ask a question to Mr. Fuller. That's what the number is about. You can also Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com. I cannot promise you for sure that it will be read today, but when the call volume slows down, then I'm able to select some Gmails to be read. So don't worry if it's not read right away or a couple of weeks or whatever, but it will be read at some time when the call volume slows down. The calls come first. Okay, let's see. Let's go get ready for our weekly holler from the Dollar. The dollar bill in New York City. Here we go. NYC dollar bill, you are there. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Oh, my God. Thank you, Mr. Bobby. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. All you guys do. I just wanted to, I'm going back to work in a couple of weeks. I think maybe one more Tuesday I'll be able to call and get my little 5 minutes of fame.
Okay.
I just wanted to, I'm at a crossroads, a fork in the road, so to say, Mr. Fuller. And I say that because I'm trying, it was MLK, the anniversary, March on Washington. And I thought to myself, when I listen to Mr. Fuller, he's saying that this is an independent thing and how we are able to fight it independently. But as I look at any type of warfare or any type of thing that we have gained in this country, it's through some type of unity in a fight, a group fight. And I'm trying to figure out why you seem to think that it's an individual fight and that we shouldn't join together and battle this system head on versus I'm just going to follow the code, I'm independent. So I'm trying to, Mr. King's last book was, where do we go from here? So that's what my question is to you. We have your code, Mr. Fuller. I think it's a wonderful piece. A lot of us, we should follow. But where do we go from here? And that will be my question. And
okay.
Have a good day, Jim.
All right. Thank you, Dollar Bill. Okay, Mr. Fuller, Dollar Bill said, where do we go to from here?
Go to a code. Anything in the universe that works has a code. The lock on your door has a code. It's something absolutely reliable. You don't have to look over your shoulder and find out that every person you went to school with is behind you, walking down the hall every time you go in your apartment or go up to your house door. You have a key, and you put the key in the lock that's coded for that key. That's it. And you don't have to look over your shoulder to see who you went to school with 15 years ago and say, in order to get in my house with my key, with my lock, I have to go and look for my old buddy that I went to school with so that he will come and stand and look over my shoulder, and we'll be what we call together as I go in my house with my key by turning my lock that is coded to let me in my house. Black people don't understand that principle. The white supremacists do. That's why just one of them can go anywhere in the world. And with the white code, they got the key to everything. That's all they took. They have a code for doing everything the white supremacists do. Not talking about all white people, but I'm talking about the most powerful people that has ever appeared on this planet, other than the messiahs. The white supremacists are the most powerful. And what makes them powerful is that they have a code. And they don't have to look over their shoulders and find out how many buddies they got. They say, I got a code. I got the white code. I got the key to every lock. I go anywhere and do anything that I please because I got all the keys to all the locks. Because that's all a code is, the key to locks. I don't get locked out of no place. I know how to talk to people according to a code. I have a code for talking to people. I'm very careful with my words. That's the white supremacists talking. Black people don't have anything like that. We just walk in and just say anything any kind of old way. Confused about everything. The white supremacists ain't confused about nothing. They're the masters of confusion. That's the key.
That's
but black people, even the smartest of black people, haven't discovered that yet.
Okay.
Because I haven't seen any evidence of that discovery. And that's why I stumble up on it, I think. I think I'm correct. Yeah, the white supremacists have a code. That's why just one or two of them can show up among millions of black people and turn them black people inside out, mostly with words. See, they have a coded language. And they're not even talking to each other. They don't say nothing to each other. Why? They got the same code. That's why if somebody got the same key to your house or to anybody else's house, they can do what you do. They don't have to check with you. See, I got all the keys to every house in this neighborhood. I don't have to check and see if my buddy is with me, because he got his own set of keys to every house in this neighborhood. You don't have to check with me. See, that's how black people are physical people. You know, we don't know how to deal with things unseen. What we call being together is that you got to physically be looking at a person. That's togetherness. You got to touch them. You got to hug them. That's black people. That's It works fine in a tribe, village. But when you're on the mountaintop alone, what do you have? See, we don't know how to function like that. See, well, I got a code for how to deal with the elements when I'm on the mountaintop alone. I got a code for getting up on top of this mountain alone, and a code for getting back down. Now, black people can't think like that. We got to look around for a crowd of black people. Then we say, now I can think. Because I got them with me.
Okay.
We are family. I got my brothers and sisters with me. The white supremacist said, my brothers and sisters are 1,000 miles away. But I am a white man, and I'm a majority of one. Because I have the white code. I got the keys to everything. And so I just walk up, insert my key, turn the lock. It works for me. It'll work for anybody that got the keys. So we need a code. That's what we need. Black people don't understand that. The white supremacists do. That's why we're going to stay in this trick bag as long as we don't understand that what we need is some coded keys. What to say, what not to say. What to do, what not to do. In every circumstance. It's just that simple. We haven't caught on to that yet. The white supremacists have it.
Okay.
They discovered that formula a long time ago. Now, we know this when it comes to things. We don't know that when it comes to people. Black people, we operate computers. We're walking up and down the street, talking to people all over the world. So we know how to operate computers. That's all it is. The computer is the key. And you're alone, but you're in touch with everybody. Now, when it comes to things, we understand that. When it comes to people, we don't understand it at all. That's why we keep saying we got to get together. So what we imagine in our minds, without knowing that that's what we're saying, we imagine 2 million years ago, a whole bunch of black people in a crowd. And if you're not in a crowd, then you can't think. You don't have a key to anything. You got to be touching somebody. You got to, join hands. That's what black people call organization. That's just a bunch of people joining hands. That's all that is. That ain't no organization. We don't understand that. The white supremacists do.
They do.
I hope that everybody who is listening to this right now, because I might be saying it in a very sloppy way like I say most things, but if you can grasp that idea of a code that always works.
Yes, sir.
Your key to that lock always works until the lock and the key are worn out and you just get another one. But it's all coded the same way, and it'll work the same way every time.
Every time. Yes, sir.
You have to understand that. And what I've tried to do with the textbooks and on this program is tell black people that's what we need, a code for everything.
Everything. And
what is a code for everything? Just do's and don'ts. You don't say this, you do say that. When you do something, you do this, you don't do that. That's all it is. That's all the code is. It's exact. Okay. And it always works.
Always works. Okay. Interesting quote out of the chat room from Freedom Culture Tech said, quote, they have waged war against our natural codification abilities. Outstanding freedom, culture, tech. Okay, going to the big D, DFW. That gigantic airport in there. Yes, Ray, I'm talking about you. Getting ready. We're getting ready to land right there. Ray, you are on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead with your question.
Yes, Mr. Bobby, I have two short questions this morning. Mr. Fuller, is it correct to conclude that wherever money is used directly or indirectly, the system of white supremacy is also at the same time fully functional?
The system of white supremacy is functional in all areas of activity 24/7. In economics, and everything connected with economics, including money, time and energy, basically, because that's what real economics really is. Time plus energy.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's born with it, time and energy. So the white supremacists say we get control of economics because we get control of everybody's time and everybody's energy. So economics, education, get control of people's education, what they learn, what they don't learn, like what being together is.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure that black people don't understand nothing about having a code except that little ghetto code that's really raggedy. You know, they do understand that. They got one. That's why the ghetto code works in the ghetto. Don't work nowhere else. All right. And that's why black people, when they get out of a ghetto situation, they're completely lost. They fall apart. Okay. But in answer to the question, yes, we're just talking about that word that we use called organize. Organization just means a code. Something that, and what is a code? When you do it, it works. That's a code. It works. I don't care what kind of name you use for it, economics, whatever, it works. When you do it, it works. It'll work for anybody who does it. It comes out of the laws of the universe. There's a way to get, a coded way, to get to the moon and back. Otherwise, you ain't going to get there and you ain't coming back. You better go according to the code.
Mm-hmm.
The code is just a way of doing things that work. Black people, head scratching. I don't know how many cartoons I've seen of a black person scratching his head, trying to get his head to work, the brain in his head. Well, it ain't working because he ain't codified. He's not trying to get codified. He doesn't understand codification when it comes to major problem solving.
Yes, sir. All righty.
Now, wait a minute. What was that question? See, that's another thing. Neely
Ray,
Fuller.
Yeah, we'll have Ray repeat that. Ray?
Huh?
Yes.
Yeah, I want to make sure that I'm answering people's questions because I have a tendency to drift away from the question the minute I get it.
Right, and I asked Ray.
Everybody out here listening to me has got to be aware of that. Mm-hmm. See, that's a code too. Fuller, you ain't answering my question. Say that.
That's why I asked Ray to repeat that question. Since you did ask the question, Mr. Fuller, I asked Ray to repeat his first question so that you could stay on point.
Yeah, Fuller has faults, just like everybody else. I mean, when you see one, point it out. You ain't helping me by that. Ain't being polite. Being polite is saying, Fuller, you ain't answering my question.
Okay.
Okay.
Continue,
Mr.
Ray.
Fuller.
Continue, Ray. Mm-hmm.
is it correct to conclude that wherever money is used directly or indirectly, the system of white supremacy is also at that same time fully functional?
Absolutely. Why? Because people are money. The white supremacists understand that. So when you control people, you got all the money in the world. And the white supremacists control all the black people on the planet. That's money. See, they understand that. That's part of the white code. Get control of people's minds, and you got money. And I got control of black people's minds. I've made them just as crazy as any people can get. They don't know nothing compared to what I know. And I tell them what's important, what to wear, what not to wear, what's in style. They don't tell me nothing. And even when I see them do something, I take control of that. And the next thing you know, I got whatever they had. Because I figure out by my code how to get it from them and use it in a bigger and a better fashion than they ever thought about. Because they think small, I think big. See, the white supremacists understand that. There's a difference between thinking small and thinking big. They know the difference.
Yes, they do. All right.
They think robbing a bank is big time. I own the banks. And I own whatever is in the banks. Every one of them, even when there's nobody in the banks but them. I own them, so therefore I own the banks.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
They talk about their black country. Ain't no such thing as that. They're in the country. They ain't got one. Okay, next, I guess, if I answered the question. That's what white supremacy means. You know?
Okay. Thank you, Ray from Dallas. Missed your two-question, Ray, but glad you're back on. Back for a second slice of the action. That's Christopher in Richmond. Get ready, Christopher. Let me put this over on the cursor right there. Okay, Christopher, wait a minute. Okay, you're there.
Hello again. I have one more question. In reference to the first question I asked about, like, is it correct to call yourself that you're not? Call yourself something that you're not. Since we're taking our cues from the white people about how to classify ourselves, and we're thinking like, okay, well, if they're white, then we have to be black because, one, they're calling us that, and two, it's the opposite of white. Shouldn't we just stop calling ourselves black if we're not black?
If it works in order to do what you want done. But I've made suggestions that, well, after thinking about it, because I do think sometimes, and I said, well, there's certain things we do and certain things we don't do. It depends on how you use words. If you're talking, you have to know how to use words if you want to get done what you think ought to be done. So I use the term black. Now, if somebody think of another term to use, and it works better than what I suggest using, then use it. See, that's another thing about codification. We don't have a code, so I'm trying to put one together. So if you come up with an idea that works, that sounds like it needs to go into a code, you don't have to get permission from anybody. That's another thing. We're so used to having to get permission. Just do it. That's what I do with the code. If I go into court right today, I got my act together. I mean, and right out of the code book, when I say that ain't no such thing as America. You think I'm just saying that on the air? I'll say that in a court of law. I mean, if I was called in the next 5 minutes of any court in the world where they let me talk, and I say I'm going to tell the truth, I hold up my hand and all like that, I would say in the first place, America doesn't exist. Americans don't exist. According to what? The evidence that I'm going to present. That's what. And we'll start asking questions because that's what you do in court. They'll start asking me questions if I'm the one on trial or whatever it is. I'm supposed to have the answer. But I'm going to answer according to the code. And I didn't get anybody's permission to say that. I don't have to say, like was just said a minute ago, we have to do it. I'm doing it. See, that's how we have to think when we start getting into codification. You don't have to get Fuller's permission. You can go in and say, hey, I'm not going to use the word black. You are actually using code then. The minute you do something on your own that the white supremacist wasn't prepared for, that's code. And it's hard for black people to get that concept because we're so used to having somebody tell us what to do.
What? Go ahead, Mr. Fuller. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say this. Would you say that, or what would you say, this statement here, the more we think we understand, the more ignorant we understand that we are?
Well, that is if our conduct shows we don't understand what we think we understand.
Mm-hmm.
When you're trying to solve a problem and you don't solve it, it means that your thinking needs to be examined. It's your thinking that needs to be examined because it's a way to solve a problem. So if you're not solving the problem, it means that your thinking needs to be examined because you're not solving the problem when somebody else is solving the problem.
Yeah.
So you need to examine what somebody else is doing.
All right.
That solves the problem.
Okay. I say that in reference to, because I'm really, and not because you said it, but I really am still learning. And when I saw the documentary about the 761st tank U.S. tank battalion in Germany, and what they did and so forth, and how they were not recognized and how they were mistreated in uniform, representing this country, particularly in the South, but really all over. I wasn't aware of the harsh treatment and the segregation that was in the military, I think, until Harry Truman or somebody, maybe Eisenhower, made, I won't say a decree, but outlawed it or whatever, discrimination or racism in the military. I was not really aware of that happening. But you were there in the military twice, in the Air Force and in the Army, and you saw and know some things. Could you share some of those experiences?
2nd Field Artillery, Fort Sill, Oklahoma, 1952. 2nd Field Artillery was all black except for one white lieutenant who was the officer in command. 2nd Field, Fort Sill, Oklahoma. After coming back from Korea, they put me in a separate unit because you ain't gonna be with the white guys no more. You could be with them on that front line in Korea, for 10 months, which is where I was, in the 955th Field Artillery Battalion out of Brooklyn, New York. And I was with 90%, over 90%, white men in Korea on the front lines. When I came back from Korea, they said, "You're back here now. You're not in Korea. And so you're not going to be with the white guys no more, because you're not on the front lines where you were supposed to have been dead, because you were sent over there as a replacement for people who were dead." That's what they called you. They said the replacement rate was high in Korea at that time that I went, that you were not likely to survive. That's why they could put me almost anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But when I did my 10 months over there and survived, 2 white sergeants picked me up at the bus station and took me to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and put me in the 2nd Field Artillery, which was an all-black unit. And it was very efficient when it came to handling those 105 millimeters. That was the most efficient unit I had ever seen when it came to actually doing the job of firing cannon. More efficient than the white guys I'd seen and been with when I was overseas in the 955th. Those black guys, all black, used to do what they call the cannoneer's boogie. You know, we jazz things up. You know how we are.
Yeah.
And they had a routine. They had a code. And boy, were they efficient. They amazed me as a unit, because they all understood each other. It wasn't always, that tension going on, talking jive talk and all like that, ghetto talk, while the cannon was being fired. They're talking ghetto talk. And they had a way of going about doing things called cannoneer's boogie. The white guys had to say, "Oh, they're doing that blankety blank thing." And you know how black people put their own spin on everything.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, a black guy with a shell in his hand, he's dancing with it. See what I mean? He's doing all kind of fancy dances, all kind of footwork, like he's on the stage somewhere. But he's doing it very efficiently. And he'd hand a shell to another guy, and boy, they had that, all 4 of those cannon, they were smoking. It would be in groups of 4 or 6. Mm-hmm. 105 howitzers, that's what they had. And, they had it synchronized. And they called it cannoneer's boogie, but it was a black thing. You wouldn't understand. That was the slogan. That's a black thing, man. You wouldn't understand.
Yes, sir.
So they knew how to make fun of it. Of course, it was in training. But if it was all training, they'd come back from, or never been in combat. But they were ready.
They were ready.
They were ready because they were so highly trained.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The best I'd ever seen when it came to cannon fire. That black unit at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, under Sergeant Fendarvis and Sergeant Ray Brown. All black. The lieutenant didn't have to tell them nothing. They knew how to do everything.
Yes. That's what I had heard about. I didn't know about that in Fort Sill, but the 761st Tank Battalion unit, I understand that they were highly trained, highly efficient, and that the white COs, highly recommended them over the white people who were already in there, but they weren't as efficient. Same way with the Tuskegee Airmen. I understand that the white air people, they preferred the black Tuskegee Airmen over the white who were supposed to escort the troops in and clear out the battlefield. And the Germans even were afraid of them just because they were highly efficient and highly trained, contrary to the thoughts that we were insufficient in a lot of areas. But then you come back here and we were mistreated or returned back to a second-class citizenship. Listen, I'm way over break, so let me get this break in before we get to the last part. You're listening to the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr., and we thank you for listening here. To get in contact with the show in the last few moments, you want to call 516-453-9921. Press the number 1 button if you have a call, and give the call screen your name and be brief in your question, particularly since we are running short on time, so that Mr. Fuller can do that, can answer your question. So make sure you do that. You can also join the chat room. There's a lot of good stuff going on in there, even some stuff from the so-called banned books or the lost books of the Bible. There's some good stuff that is going in there. Check it out. All you got to do is go to blogtalkradio.com. You want to make sure that you click on programs. When you do that, then another menu will come up. You want shows, and you want to produce Justice Show. You get into that, and then the chat room is available, and you can get in there and look at the stuff that's going on. In particular, somebody wrote about Second Esdras. Yeah, you didn't know about that, did you? One of the so-called lost books of the Bible. Yeah. Anyway, there's more than 66. But anyway, a lot of good questions in there, a lot of good substance. You can get in there and get that. Don't forget this. This is important. Make sure, if you haven't, make sure that you go to producejustice.com to pick up the books. The books. You need the books. The 2 books and the Word Guide. You need those to help you understand what you're dealing with and how to. And by the way, as Mr. Fuller had said earlier, these are suggestions on how to solve the problem of racism, white supremacy. Okay, I believe that is it. But, okay, yeah, a lot of people always ask me, to ask you questions about they're intrigued with your military service. And some of us who were not in the military, my dad was, but the treatment that the black soldiers got when they came back here were just awful. And a lot of that story hasn't been told. So every time you get a chance to talk about your military service, and again, thank you for all the service that you've given us, and even here in writing the books. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Okay, go to Ryan in Buffalo. Okay, Ryan, get ready. Let me see if I can get this cursor over there. Okay, Ryan in Buffalo, you are in. You got to turn it down in the background. Can't hear.
I'm sorry. I'm in a building right now. Good morning, Mr. Boggs. Good morning, Mr. Fuller. I'll be really quick. Mr. Fuller, what do you say to individuals who claim that racism is over?
Oh, the code says that you just listen to them and say, okay, well, so what I have written will not apply to them. You don't argue. You don't argue. See, that's a part of the code. Never argue with anybody about anything. Arguments just make more arguments. Conversations, okay. Argument, never. Don't have an argument. Argument leads to conflict. You already got conflict. And you definitely don't need more conflict with other non-white people, with other black people, about nothing. In fact, the code says you minimize conflict. Anytime it looks like voices are going to be raised and people are going to start name calling and all that, the code prohibits that. So you just say, well, I'll talk to you. The code even says what you do when that starts happening. You say, sir or ma'am, always be polite. I will talk to you at some other time. Now, you're not saying you won't talk to them. That's not code. You'll talk to them, but not now, because this is an argument. And, we don't argue. See, that's code. You got to remember that. You know, the arguments just get hotter and hotter. Next thing you know, somebody gets hurt. So you just say, I will talk to you at some other time, at your convenience. Talk to them and have them talk to you. Have a conversation, not an argument. Once the voices start getting raised and the name calling starts, terminate that immediately. I mean, and get away from the person.
Get away.
Saying, I'll talk to you some other. See, now you're even leaving on the correct note, according to the code. I will talk to you at some other time. That's your will. You're willing to talk, but not at this particular time.
Not at this
Why?
particular time.
Because an argument is breaking out.
And we don't want that. No.
No, not a single argument ever about nothing. We have a conversation. Conversation is you're focusing on what needs to be done or not being done.
Okay.
Once you start having an argument, the code says you break off. You break off from the person. Minimize conflict by doing what? Minimizing contact.
Minimizing contact.
I'll make contact with you at some other time, or you make contact with me when we can talk and have a conversation, not an argument. Black people need that terribly.
Okay.
See, we make the conflict worse. Start name calling and all like that. No.
Yes.
Once that argument starts, no, I will talk to you some other time. Hey, Willie, I'll talk to you some other time. No, you're going to talk to me now, ML. I'll talk to you some other time, Willie. I got to go now. I need to be someplace else. Someplace else like what? Away from this argument. So it ain't going to get no better.
Okay.
Arguments don't.
All right, Mr. Fuller, thank you, Ron in Buffalo. Mr. Fuller, the man who they say was a racist, had swastikas on his rifle and so forth, and made a racist manifesto, killed these people down in Jacksonville, Florida, I think at least 3. Did it surprise you, or was it surprising that he killed himself?
Well, I'm not surprised at anything white supremacists do. That's code. Never be surprised. Think of them as being capable of anything. So I just take that as information in answer to the question. I wasn't expecting it, but I wasn't surprised either. Because I'm not surprised at anything that the white supremacists do. I mean, they go to the moon. I guess.
That wouldn't be considered emergency.
Be specific about that. Yeah,
okay.
Go ahead.
That wouldn't be. Would that be considered in the 9th area of activity with war about emergency? He killed himself with the you know what I'm trying to say about the compensation, killing himself like that instead of being in that one-room jail cell with that one bullet.
Well, that's something the code looks at that like that's just something he decided to do.
Okay.
So the white supremacists might decide to do any number of things. So never be surprised at anything they decide to do Except justice.
Except justice, yeah. I got you on that one for sure.
Yeah.
Except justice. Very good.
Yeah, see, that's code. No, don't be surprised at anything that white supremacists do. They know how to take people by surprise. They're real good at it.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, do they come up with stuff out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, just we want to get that through. Let's go to Chris in Kansas City. Chris, you're on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question?
Hey, Dr. Fuller, people have asked you several times, can a black person be married under the system of white supremacy? And I think you said that in the system of white supremacy, you're a prisoner of war before you're anything else. So while I'm sitting in this prison called the system of white supremacy, I can say that I'm anything. I can say that I'm the king of the moon, but at the end of the day, I'm still a prisoner of war, right?
Sure. See, the white supremacists allow black people because white supremacists love for black people to go around bragging about what they are. Man, anytime they hear a black person bragging, they say, we got them. That's why the code says black people shouldn't brag about anything ever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't care what you accomplish. You ain't nowhere near where you ought to be. That's according to the code.
Yes, sir.
Nowhere in the neighborhood of what you ought to be and how you should function. We're nowhere near that. None of us. According to what? According to the evidence and according to logic. And the white supremacists, the white people who are not white supremacists, you know, they're nowhere near they ought to be either. Nobody is. So bragging about anything should be something that no people should be doing. Why? Because just on one thing alone, people killing each other. So where's the bragging coming from? Handing out awards and all like that. That should never happen. Marching across the stage, handing out awards in the middle of all this mess, bragging on somebody in the middle of all of this death, people killing each other every day. And bragging about it. The white supremacists, they brag about killing. They brag about killing more than they brag about anything. And we're all a part of it. We,
yes,
the
sir.
victims of white supremacy.
Mm-hmm.
So where's the bragging coming from? I mean, that is vulgar. That is obscene to the nth degree. Grinning and exchanging awards. Don't you dare. I have a few. But I don't deserve no award. When the killing stops, that can be, well, hey, a sigh of relief. You even hand out awards then. When nobody on the planet kills anybody, that's not no time to give awards. There's no time to give awards because we're too far behind. Just breathe a sigh of relief. Say, finally, the cannonballs stopped flying. The bullets stopped coming through walls, killing children. Finally, somebody got some sense.
All right.
Right now, ain't nobody got no business bragging about nothing. I don't care what it is.
All righty. All right. Thank you, Chris. Okay, back with Ray in Dallas. Ray, you're on again with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead with your question.
Mr. Fuller, what constructive purpose does money serve in a system of justice?
Oh, money serves a purpose in a system of justice. Yes, serves a correct purpose. Anything serves a correct purpose in a system of justice, because in a system of justice, everything works the way that it ought to. That's what we're trying to produce, a system of justice. In a system of white supremacy, nothing works between people the way that it ought to. The system of white supremacists do not allow it. So we got no idea of what it's like. Or maybe we do, those who do. I know I don't. That's a blank piece of paper. What a system of justice is like, because I have never experienced it. See, when you experience something, that's when you really know what a system is like. Justice has never been available or produced or evidence of it in recorded history. People have always been, in recorded history, out of balance with each other. There's never been a time when the people of this planet, in recorded history, where people interacted with people. That's what justice is. Perfectly. No time in recorded history has that been among any people. And people have gotten more knowledgeable and more skill at handling things in recorded history here in the year 2023 when it comes to people and things. How they skill. But when it comes to people interacting with people, that's any people, white and non-white. Mm-hmm. We're nowhere close. Because that's why we don't have this thing called what? Justice.
Justice.
We don't have balance between people. Guaranteeing that no person is mistreated and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help.
Constructive help, yes, sir.
Nobody, nowhere, among any people does that exist.
Uh-huh. Okay. Move down to the last here. Let me get a Gmail in here. This is from a person that said that I would like to remain anonymous. So let me read the Gmail. By the way, thank you, Ray. It says, Mr. Fuller often speaks of books on what to do about racism as the basis for publishing the code book. While the compensatory code book is a superb work in using logic to address problems, I offer two books for additional reading. White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo and Urugu by Marimba and Nye. Both books offer great insight into the mindset of whites and will help non-whites in further developing strategies for dismantling the system of white supremacy. Many thanks to Mr. Fuller for bringing in enlightenment to the listening audience. This is from Anonymous. White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo and Urugu by Marimba Ani. A-N-I. Okay. Well, I tell you what you can do. You can go to producejustice.com and get the publications that Mr. Fuller has written, the two books and the Word Guide. at ProduceJustice.com. Mr. Fuller, we have a few minutes before we end this particular show. What about those books at ProduceJustice.com? Speak about those for a few moments, please, sir.
Well, the basic book has on the cover the year, so you don't get confused about what's in each book. That is the Compensatory Counter-Racist Code, 2016. That's the basic book. 2016, Neely Fuller Jr. A Compensatory Counter-Racist Code. Now, this is an updated version of the 1984 edition, which has a computer design on it. That's on the cover of it. Dots and dashes and all kinds of... It looks like a circuit board. That's the best way I'll describe it. Now, that's the original 1984 edition of the updated edition, 2016. This is the original. And there's more in the 2016 edition, including most of what was in the 1984 edition. The 2016 edition is the go-to book, because sometimes people get confused. The 2016 edition is an updated version of the original edition, which is 1984. And you'll see that listed as such, 1984, on the inside of the cover. And the Counter-Racist Word Guide is an extension of the 2016 edition, so you don't get confused. So basically, you have the 2016 edition. That's the go-to book, basically. And if you want the Word Guide, which is an extension of the 2016 edition, I would like to have it in just one book, but I was told I couldn't do that because it would be too thick. And but I've seen books that had 1,001 pages that was in one volume. So I'm going to work that out in the future, maybe, if I can, if I last long enough, where I can have just one book. I won't have three up there at all. But right now, it's the 2016 edition and the 2010 Word Guide. And so you don't get confused if you decide to order. I do hope that you do order by going to ProduceJustice.com.
Yes.
And somebody did recommend something that somebody wrote. Right now, I'm finding out that more and more people, I strongly suspect that they have talked to somebody who has read my book, or that they have read it themselves, and they're writing books of their own based on what I have written, but they didn't they didn't put in the index or anything, any references about my book. Some people do.
Yeah.
But most of them don't.
All righty. Well, we got to cut it short.
Yes, okay.
We got
But go to ProduceJustice.com.
Okay, ProduceJustice.com. Okay, we'd like to thank you, Mr. Fuller. We'd like to thank you, listening audience, for all your calls, for your listening, for your questions, your Gmails, for everything. You've been good, been very, very good. So we hope to do better. We made a lot of mistakes today. We are really working to try to get better. So forgive us, but we're still learning. So hopefully we'll see you next week. Mr. Fuller, the last word goes to you.
I'll just say, best way to start if you want to help out and solve this problem. Just do it by getting my volumes and see what you think. Go to producejustice.com and keep up with this program in my raggedy way of presentation, and it's getting ragged here, but I'm doing the best I can.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Thank you, everybody. Have a good week.